I'm Microsoft teaming with Microsoft Teams. I'm learning and dreaming with Microsoft Teams. The hub and the teamwork of Microsoft 365 in these quarantine times. I'm Microsoft teaming with Microsoft Teams. Yeah, with Microsoft Teams.
With over 340 employees, Mainstream Renewable Power is one of the most ambitious renewable energy companies on the planet. Since they were founded in 2008, they've delivered more than 6 gigawatts of wind and solar assets and have developed the world's largest offshore wind farms. Now, you're going, wait a minute, didn't Marty McFly need 1.21 gigawatts, or as Doc Brown said it, gigawatts, to travel back to the future? So if we think about it, 1 gigawatt is equal to 1 billion watts, and most of us are familiar with a watt. Light bulbs in our house are usually 60 to 100 watts. So, follow me, 1.2 gigawatts would power more than 10 million light bulbs, or about 300,000 homes. Now understand that Mainstream is delivering 6 gigawatts to its users through the company and plans to complete an additional 5.5 gigawatts of clean energy products by 2023. They have wind and solar plants, as you can see here, all over the world. So their goal is to create an energy system that would meet the demands of a country the size of Ireland in less than 3 years. And behind all this great stuff is Teams. So I am super excited to have Mark Kane, who is the head of Information Solutions, to join us today and talk all about the great work that they are doing to help provide energy and save our planet and use Microsoft Teams to do it. Mark, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks so much, Stephen. It's great to be here.
It is awesome to have you. So take a moment and tell our viewers a little bit about yourself.
Sure thing. Well, I'm the head of Information Solutions for Mainstream. I joined in 2008. My background has always been in technology. My passion has always been about the environment and sustainability. So this was a dream job for me to be able to join a company that is leading the way in sustainability. And we're doing it all with Microsoft products on the information technology side.
Absolutely love it. And I do have to call out, you have some amazing art behind you. And if I remember correctly, you were saying that your wife painted some of those. Is that correct?
Well, my wife is in one of those. She's in the one beside me there. They're actually by the same artist, but taken 10 years apart. That's why I'm looking a bit younger there. 2008 when I started in Mainstream. Yeah.
Love it. But you're an art lover, much like myself. I wore my Ziggy Stardust Frida K host shirt today just to celebrate that. So anyways, back to our topic. Yes. So in 2014, you started as a company to move to software as a service. And I love the fact that you said that the S in SaaS really needs to mean supportable and streamlined. You then moved to SharePoint Online and Skype for Business, which really kind of started you down that collab and management journey. And in 2019, when the pandemic hit, you were just getting away from Skype and moving to Teams. So everything shifted. So kind of talk about what was going through your mind. I know that you had a great opportunity to better increase interactions, but how did you sort of take this on, and what was the thought as this all sort of kicked in and it went from, hey, we want to do this, to, okay, we have to do this and we're fully committed and it's full speed ahead?
Well, let me go back to 2014, if I may,
Please.
Because the other S that the software, scalability, supportability, is also security. Back in 2013, Microsoft and others had to publish articles convincing customers that the cloud was safe. Right. In 2021, we know that the cloud is the safest place to be. So our bet was, in order to be able to scale, to be secure, and to be supportable, we wanted to be in the cloud, and that's why we took that journey on early. With Microsoft Teams, that was something that we implemented in early 2019, only shortly after we had implemented Skype for Business Cloud PBX. And it was off the back of a conversation with Microsoft where we were told Microsoft is betting everything on Teams, and we always want to follow the right roadmap and not end up at a dead end. So right. that was a big rollout for us in 2019, which was complete well before the pandemic hit, which none of us could have envisaged, that we would have had to move all of our colleagues in all of our offices worldwide to remote working overnight.
Now, you talked about Teams' approach was sort of a hearts and mind training. So how did you do that? And I know that one of the big things, and we've talked about this, is how do you get users to use this, is you absolutely had a top-down approach that if our senior leaders aren't using it and aren't engaged, no one below them will, into that level. So how did you approach that as the pandemic now hits and people are sort of using it, but not to its fullest? How did you really sort of engage everyone and show them the potential that was available through the product?
Well, our initial rollout was we made sure to do a road trip. Well, it was a long distance flight trip to each of the offices and ran multiple education and awareness sessions on Teams and that it was coming, what it was bringing. And in order to get people to turn up to any IT presentation, you have to make it a little bit more interesting. So we did it with a lot of sort of movie references and context. So we had the Lord of the Rings music and told them about how Teams was one ring to rule them all, and really brought them on that journey, telling them how they could create their own fellowships within teams of cross-functional disciplines, and really got them understanding it based on those analogies. In terms of our senior leaders, you know, as with any organization, there are some that are more tech comfortable than others, and we started with those because as they would then start sending out invites, Teams meetings and others just needed to click on the link, it started to spread. So we used those to influence the others, and eventually everybody realized just how better an experience Teams was than Skype for Business, and it's a natural switch over.
Absolutely, yeah. With Teams, you can leave your baggins at home because you won't need to travel. Sorry, that was a really, really bad dad joke. So you're rolling out Teams. You have this sort of minimal impact and change, which is great. Now you had folks adding it to their cell phones, and you're finding that tools like Whiteboard is really changing meetings. So talk to me about, what really started to change how you now looked at Teams. I know that, you've got to go back and take a look at security, because the goal is we want to allow you want to allow your users to work from anywhere on any device, but to be able to do it securely. So what sort of steps did you take? Did you sort of go back a little bit and retake a look at security? Now more people are using it on mobile. What were kind of the steps when you went, okay, we're home, we're committed, here's what we need to do to make it a better, safer experience?
Prior to that, we already had two-factor authentication in place, so that was already there. Our big challenge was really when COVID hit, that people were then all of a sudden no longer protected by the company firewall. So we had to roll out a virtual firewall to all the laptops. What we did following that is we re-imaged all of the laptops remotely using a cloud image built in Microsoft Intune, connected and monitored by Microsoft Sentinel. So right now, we actually have people are possibly safer at home and more secure at home than they would be in a company network. And I saw that Satya Nadella had said about how Microsoft's way going forward is not to have employees on the company network. So it's good to know that we've gone down a similar path.
How easy was it for everybody to understand, pick up, and leverage MFA? Because if you take a look at, Secure Score, and that's a free tool that we have where you can go in and it sort of gives your organization a credit score. It gives it a grade on how good your security is. And one of the biggest things that you can do to move those points up is turn on MFA. So how did you get folks to get used to that by saying, it's not about a password anymore, it's what you have, or, it's your face, it's your finger, et cetera, that is going to get you into your content across devices?
Well, we again, when we were choosing the 2FA solution, for us, there was only one choice, and it was Microsoft Authenticator. Everybody in Mainstream gets a company-provided smartphone, so it's not an issue that we're sort of, asking them to put something on a personal device. and we had a great partner to help us with the implementation. So it worked seamlessly. There were no nasty surprises there. And later on, when we implemented additional technologies such as DocuSign after COVID hit, then two-factor authentication worked seamlessly there as well. We only had a few people complain about it. They were saying, "What if I have my laptop with me, but I don't have my phone?" And I just looked them in the eye and said, "Really? When do you not have your phone?"
Perfect. One of the other aspects of really engaging your users and helping to prepare them with Teams is leveraging Viva. And you've been an early proponent of Viva. Talk a little bit about, first of all, what Viva is and how you're using it.
Well, Viva has a number of areas to it. One is the insights and the analytics. How are you working? Avoiding burnout. It's a fantastic platform for employee wellness, but also for HR teams. To make sure that people are being looked after. But it's phenomenal also for onboarding. If you consider that how many people have joined new companies during a pandemic and have never met their colleagues. This is a great way for them to feel included from day one, to get the online training that they need, maybe to get some introductory videos where they'll get to know people who might be in other regions. The great thing about it is it's all within Microsoft Teams, and it'll link back and pull in content from LMS 365 or LinkedIn Learning or other learning platforms, but contextualize them all in one place. So doing for the learning systems what Teams did for all of our other technologies.
So what I want to do, because you had said that the LMS system, your learning management system that you had brought in, and the integration of Planner were really important to your success. So let's do a demo. Why don't we take a look at those?
Sure thing. Well, I'll share my screen and we'll go into Microsoft Teams. So here we are. We start in our own area, information solutions, and just here on the the tabs, we have a number of pillars. Security is key for us. Our services to our colleagues, our stakeholder management, our ISO standards, the IS strategy, which is very much Microsoft centric, and also what we call streamlining, which are our continuous improvement projects. We never like to stand still. So if I go in here, first of all, to security, we'll see here we have one module on LMS 365, which we've called Defense Against the Dark Arts, a little homage there. Fortunately, I've taken this course, so I don't need to do it again. If I switch out there to show you our LMS 365 IS Academy, this is something that we implemented on LMS 365 back during the pandemic, just to give some colleagues who may have not been as busy in their non-office-based roles initially, something that they could improve their Microsoft skills with. So we have all of the Microsoft products on here that people can take in their own time, online courses, take an exam on them, get the internal certification, and be on our leaderboard.
Is this content that you created and that your company created, or you're leveraging from other places? I think for people that are looking at this, they're like, this is great. So I have two questions. First of all, how do you track who's done what? And B, where did this content come from?
Yeah, well, the great question. The Microsoft technology content came from Microsoft through LMS 365. It was a content pack, so it was almost instantaneous just to import that and publish it. We decided to tailor it somewhat, to do exams at the end, and to do an Information Solutions Academy certificate that people could get at the end. It's connected directly up with our Azure Active Directory, so we can track exactly who has done what and who still has to do a course. If we define that something is mandatory, or if our next step will be certain roles will have to do certain courses, and we can have them from day one, seeing that these are the recommended courses for them to take. This has been such a success. We're rolling it out organization wide. Our friends in SHEC, the Safety and Health Department, have started using this for their online training, and we're rolling it out beyond that again.
That's awesome. So the other thing you said was Planner was a really big piece of what you're doing. And I don't think a lot of people really use Planner. So can you kind of tell us what Planner is and how you're using it and why it's been so impactful?
Yeah. Well, the best way to describe it is, we've all been in those situations where we have, recurring meetings and we get a lot of emails and, we turn up to the follow-up meeting and just maybe that 10 minutes before the meeting, we're just checking the notes and somewhere hidden down the bottom, it's saying, oh, there's an action for Mark to do this by the next meeting, and you missed it because you get bombarded with so many emails. The great way about using Planner is you decide, say, I'm going to use Planner for these recurring meetings, and you capture the actions in there as you go. And, it's assigned, and Planner will remind you have something coming due. So we use it across the board. So if we have our regular security meeting, I have here my security tasks. So I'll just go in on that, security tasks. We'll see there'll be some in there, and that is effectively just a Planner tab in terms of what needs to be done from that meeting. We have on each of the areas, if I go to my ISO area, we also have these tasks. We have our opportunities for improvement that come from the audit, from our other governance meeting. So numerous different places where you will have different tasks, but where it comes into its own is that you get to see them all in context in one place on the Tasks by Planner app. And the message that we want to get across is two things. One is, that horror scenario where you come to a meeting and you're not prepared, and Planner effectively makes life easier for you, but then also for managers, it makes it easy so they're not spending all the time reminding people, because Planner does the reminding.
Why don't you create a new one? I'd like to see what that looks like and how you assign tasks to other people, because I think, again, that's something that not a lot of folks are leveraging. So I'd love to see how you do it and kind of your thought process as you go through it.
Sure thing. Well, let's add something to the security tasks. We had recently announced from Microsoft was the Microsoft and Darktrace collaboration, strategic partnership. So what we might say is, publish, a news story internally on Darktrace. So if I assign that, I just say I want to get that done by the 31st, and I can assign it, and I'll say I'll assign it to myself.
Now, after you assign something, what happens?
Yeah, I'll get an email. But the other thing is that if I forget about it, I will get a reminder as that is coming due, and it should be appearing there. But let's have a look. Assigned to me, possibly. There we go. Assigned to me. So there we go. Publish a news story internally in Darktrace. And you'll see here the important part is the source. What meeting did that come from? Right. So you'll get it in the context of where did it come from. So across all of your different meetings, you have them in context in the one place. And you can go in, you can mark it complete, you can provide evidence, put in a link or an attachment to say this is what I've done and here's the evidence. That's our rule, is you can't close it unless you provide in the evidence that it's closed.
And the nice thing is if you assign tasks to a variety of people, there's actually a dashboard and you can see who's done it, who's completed, where everything's at. So you really have a great single place inside of Teams to not only see what you've done, but tasks that you've assigned to people. And that becomes a really great way to just remind people of what needs to be done. Or, if I say, hey, let's take that as an action item, I love it when it's a task, because then it shows up in my email. I get those different reminders. It's not just up to me or me putting the onus on the person who asked me to get that done. I like it when other people use it, because I can say, great, I'll assign these to you, and I know when to check in. Hey, I'm noticing this isn't done, or you haven't updated a percentage. And most of the time, it's not that the person didn't do it. It's just they're not familiar with Planner and doing that. And now also To Do, which has some overlap there, which is now fully integrated into Outlook Online and is going to be coming to Outlook on desktop.
The great thing for that Planner really does is that everybody's agreed these are the actions, these are the due dates. You're agreeing in the meeting, you're committing to do this by this date, and it's up to you to do it. And Planner will do the reminders where previously, the organizer of the meeting or the manager would be reminding people and chasing people, and that can become a bad habit, because people can then get into the mode where they say they can rely on being reminded. So having it automated with Planner is a far better way to do it.
I think it's also great when you get to that sort of, review time period or connect where you could see all the different work that you've done, or just say, hey, this person's not getting things done. Here's the 70 tasks that I have sent to a variety of people over the last 90 days to get done. And there are 9 not done, and it's all from this person. So, hey, there's an issue here. What do we need to do to solve this? Or how could I sit down with this person or understand, are they just not updating, or are they not getting it done? So it can help you to kind of figure out where there may be some weak spots or issues early and put the onus on that person to get things done. It's not you chasing after them, which nobody enjoys doing.
Well, we're in the very fortunate position. We don't have that. We have a contract not estimate culture. What we have is that it gives us a system, a record of all of these activities. And that's very useful for us when we go into our ISO audits, because they're always looking for evidence of continuous improvement. And then we have a big long list of completed tasks.
That's awesome. I didn't even think about that. So you talked a little bit earlier about, your Win 10 images. And one of the things that happened, and a lot of companies found out, is those were based on being in person. So what did you do now that people were going to be remote? Did you wipe the machines and start over? Did you just change software? How did you shift that on-prem to remote?
When we retired the legacy data center, and we were at that stage, I think we had our original Windows 10 image was probably a year and a half, 2 years old at that stage. And what we knew we wanted is, we said we want to build a new standard secure cloud image entirely based on Microsoft cloud technologies, and it was leveraging Microsoft Intune. And we had a number of features that we wanted the image to have, and it was principally around security, but also the ease of deploying approved apps remotely, and in some cases automatically, to our colleagues. Because one strict rule that we've always had is no local admin rights. Right. And Microsoft Intune has been fantastic for that, is that people can get the approved apps that they need from there without having to go through the service function and request for something to be installed.
Awesome. So now we're full in pandemic, and people now are creating teams like crazy. And the one question I continually get is, how do you prevent team sprawl? And you had a really good idea and process on how to do this to make sure that teams were not being duplicative or sprawl. Walk us through that ability that you use to lock down the ability for end users to just go out and just create a bunch of teams.
Well, we had taken a lesson that we learned from years earlier when we rolled out SharePoint Online, is that we wanted to make sure that we had a structure and a taxonomy in place that made sense for everybody, and that we didn't end up with 3 country sites for South Africa or 4 different project sites for the same wind farm. So we had locked down the ability to create sites years before, and we saw it as a logical extension to lock down the ability to create teams. So what colleagues needed to do is they needed to request the creation of a team. We used a simple SharePoint list, but we got a notification for it and we had to approve it. And in many cases, we found that what they were looking for was really just a channel and something where they could add that into to an existing team.
How did you get to that point? Because that is the point for people, is, does this need to be a team or can it be a channel? Kind of tell me your thinking there, because I think this is something that a lot of IT pros and folks stumble over. Yeah.
Everybody seems to sort of think from the beginning it needs to be a team, and often it's a case of you get on a call with people and you show them what's there and you say, logically, we'd see it would fit better within here. And usually it's by showing them some other equivalent of that so that it's not appearing so abstract. And often they realize, in fact, yes, that's exactly what I need. I just need a channel that I can add a number of tabs to. Sometimes they're just looking for a tab.
Do you wish that you would have thought differently when you first rolled out Teams about templates and tabs, or are you really happy with what you did, or is that just an evolving process?
Well, that's something when we rolled it out at first, they would have been very rudimentary, just with the few default tabs that were there. In retrospect, we were unaware of the rich number of applications that were available that we could have used and could have made available to people. So maybe a little bit of regret that we didn't have that standardized from the beginning, but possibly it may have been the right approach, not to overwhelm people with everything and let them grow into it organically. And by training them up, once they have their team site that they're the owner of, that they're able to add a channel, they're able to add tabs, they're starting to embrace that themselves.
And then when somebody joins, because you are obviously bringing in new people to help as this is growing and you're looking at different opportunities, what's that like for someone who comes in on day one? Because now they can see everything that's been done. So how do you kind of get away from that, here's the fire hose, drink from it kind of aspect?
Well, I personally think it's fantastic, because think about pre-Teams, before we had this persistent chat in context to all of these topics, we had emails, and emails were sent at a point in time. And if somebody joined the team, they never received that email, that important piece of information. So I find it extremely valuable for people that they can join a team and they can look back at what has been going on over the last number of months. I find it also a great way for people to switch off properly when they're on annual leave, and they can come back and they can have a look at what has been going on instead of drowning in hundreds and hundreds of emails that they have to decide which one of these was relevant or important for me.
Yeah. And one of the things that I also love is you have found some great ways to celebrate people in some super geeky ways, which I love. Talk a little bit about the Avengers thing you did. Unfortunately, we can't show it because we don't want to get sued by Marvel, but I'd love to hear you kind of talk about it because it was a big hit and it was super creative and really fun. So take a moment and talk about what you did there.
Sure. Well, our company was recently acquired, and we're very much on the path to becoming what's known as a renewable energy major. And to celebrate that, we launched what was called a Committing to Change event, and it was using the rocket ship, and all of the different functions were asked to say in about 30 seconds how they are committing to change. So we've always sort of called ourselves the IS Avengers internally, that everyone has their character. So our head of cybersecurity is Hulk, who smashes cyber attacks. Our guru on Microsoft Intune and AI does all of his work via the web. Obviously, he's Spider-Man.
Spider-Man sure was, yeah.
We have Iron Man, who's also our cybersecurity analyst, and he's doing also other automation work on robotic process automation. So we essentially got everybody in character, and that's how we announced what we were doing. So it was a great hit. We were waiting for it to feature on the day, and they kept the best wine till last. We featured right at the end with the closing remarks by our CEO. She said, "I don't know how I can follow that."
And what character were you, Mark?
I was Star-Lord.
Very nice.
It's the dancing, so dance off, bro.
I love that. I absolutely love that, Mark. It is a pleasure, and I'm very excited to see what is next for you as things come down the next 3 years. But you're doing some really amazing work, and what's great is everybody's working hard. You guys are all working hard, but you're really making a difference in our planet. So thank you so much for all the great work you do, and much success to you and to your team. Thanks for joining me today.
My great pleasure, Stephen. Thank you so much.
Make sure to check out the great case study that we did on Mainstream Renewable Power that digs into more on some of the end user stuff that they did. And also check out their website because they have some really fantastic information on what they're doing and how they're making this change. I want to thank everybody for an amazing season. This is our last episode of season 3. We'll come back with season 4 in July. A huge thanks to producer Meg and my behind the scenes team of Samuel, Aaron, Hillary, and Jerry for their great work, and to all of our hardware partners who showed up this year to give us great devices to take a look at and to give away to all of you. And of course, to all of you who have tuned in and joined for this whole season. We'll be back in July for season 4. We have some amazing guests, and I'm looking forward to doing some shows in person from some conferences I'm going to be doing a little bit later this year and give you an inside look at that. So lots of exciting stuff coming. As always, if you have ideas for a show or something you'd love to see or be on a show, Ping me on Twitter at Stephen L. Rose. I would love to hear from you. Check out all of our great videos and our great guests. And if you have questions for them, hey, post them and we'll make sure to get folks like Mark to answer those questions. Have a great day. Thanks for joining. I'm your host, Stephen Rose. Take care.